What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. And Dana White is lying. So if you don't know what's going on, Dana White and the UFC got exposed for editing out Ngannou's name out of UFC Countdown. So it all started with Israel during the pre-fight press conference was talking about, hey, Dricus du Plessis started talking about me, Ngannou, and Usman, and that's what really kicked off their beef between them two, right? But when the UFC went back and did their countdown edit, they decided to remove Francis Ngannou's name to it. Let's go ahead and just watch the clip so you know what I'm talking about.
He tried to discredit the Three Kings and say that he's the real true African champion. And I was just like, it's a weird mindset, bro. Like, he came in the UFC, I knew who he was a little bit, but I didn't go, oh, who the fuck's this fake dude coming in? I just said, cool, there's another African in the UFC. But then him discrediting me, Francis Ngannou, Kamaru Usman, that ticked me off a little bit. So that's what started this. But again, I'll finish it.
So, see, that is the original, right? But when the UFC went back and did their countdown edit, this is what they decided to do.
Between yourself and Dricus, can you just run through why that is?
There's always tension whenever you fight anyone. This is a fight at the end of the day. We're not playing chess, we're fighting. So there's always gonna be tension there. But then him discrediting me, Kamaru Usman, he came in the UFC.
And that right there ticked off Israel. And Israel actually responded to that, right? Let's go ahead and play that.
And I would support them as well. And also, you can never erase Francis' history from the UFC. I'll say that. It's part of history. We need to fix this. I don't like that. I don't like the fact we're trying to just cut out a really important part of history. It's silly. It's really silly. But we'll fix that. That's for later on. We'll fix that. And I would support them as well. And also...
So, the UFC has a history of doing this. Anytime when you have a beef with the UFC, they tend to erase your history. This is not only with Francis Ngannou. This happened to Tito Ortiz. This happened to Randy Couture, and many, many more. If you ever spoke up against the UFC, they make sure that your legacy is pretty much erased, right? But what I don't like is Dana White playing dumb, like this wasn't his thing or his choosing for them to do this. This is what Dana White's response to when Kevin Iole called him out on this.
Why did you scrub Francis out of the video and that?
I don't know about this. Do you? Do
Yeah,
you,
there was
Lene? Do you know about this? Yeah.
So
None of us.
Adesanya talked. There was I'm not sure which one of the shows it was, but there was one of the shows and there was a thing, and Francis came on the screen, and his name got scrubbed out, right? They didn't say his name, so you couldn't hear it, as if like he wasn't part of the UFC, as if he wasn't part of the history.
And it was something that we produced?
Correct. And then Israel at the press conference before the fight actually talked about it, and and he had commented on that, and I was just kind
So are you sure that we produced this?
Yes. Yes.
So what show was it on?
I can't remember. There were so many of them, but I don't remember which one it was, but for sure.
So that clip of Israel that I showed you earlier, excuse me, that clip of Israel that I showed you earlier kind of blew up, right? It got 450,000 views on Twitter, right? So you tell me nobody in the UFC told Dana White that Israel said this? He's playing dumb right here.
It was on last week. It was a show that you produced, and he then
embedded or something.
It might have been embedded. But he made the comment. He said the UFC are good people. I know that they're going to eventually do the right thing. But he was critical of the UFC for scrubbing Francis out.
Well, I don't disagree with that. But literally everybody who's sitting in here right now, including our head of PR, doesn't know about it. And
our head of PR doesn't know about this clip, right? Of Israel saying, "I don't like that." It blew up everywhere. It was not only this one place, championship rounds. It was on every media, MMA media account talking about this, right? But Dana White saying the head of PR, guys, PR, never heard of this. Okay, let's give Dana White the pass. Let's say he's busy, right? He's doing all these things, okay. But your head of PR is telling us they didn't see a clip from Israel's interview that he did with the UFC and ESPN talking about how he doesn't like this. Interesting.
And when did Israel say it? Post fight?
At the pre-fight press conference.
Pre-fight. Yeah, I wasn't there. Lene wasn't there.
I'll find it
Were you
on
there,
social.
Chris? Chris wasn't there. Well, we'll find out what happened, and I'll have Lene call you and tell you what the deal is with that.
If you watch Dana White's post conferences, press conferences, when he gets asked questions like this, and he doesn't truly know about it, he just goes, "I don't know," and keeps it pushing. This one, he made out his way to make sure someone contacts Kevin Iole with a follow-up. He normally doesn't do that. Usually it ends at the press conference and he moves on to whatever he got going on, right? But this one, he made sure to follow up because he knew he was in the wrong.
Because if that's true and that was done and it was something that we produced, then somebody in the company made that decision. That definitely, listen, you know me. If I said we did it, I'd say, yeah, fuck him, and this is why we did it. I know nothing about it. Nobody ever asked me about it, and this is the first we're hearing about it.
Same guy, mind you, same guy. When Francis does anything, tells us that he has a fight going on, who's boxing, anything. Dana White decides to drop like a UFC card or give us UFC news to overshadow anything Francis got going with them. But this is the same guy we want to trust, right?
I would tell you
So I'm just reading this, a CBS Sports story. It says, Adesanya reinforced Ngannou's significance to the UFC amid cases where the promotion appeared to scrub mention of the former heavyweight champion. You can never erase Francis's history from the UFC, Adesanya told ESPN while looking straight into the camera ahead of UFC 305 in Perth. So I'm not sure, it doesn't say exactly. There's a video below that also shows Israel talking, but it doesn't talk exactly what video it was he was referencing.
right. So when we find out, she'll let you know.
The head of PR didn't see a CBS story about this too. So like I'm saying, there's so many avenues and so many people that cover this, but Dana White here is playing dumb, right? And this is not the first time they did it. There's this post that Francis Ngannou made about this fighter here. He said, I can't pronounce his name, so I don't want to mess it up. Was the first Cameroonian in the UFC. I was second. Don't let them lie and erase history. Francis Ngannou tweeted this back in August of 2023. And it's just kind of random, right? But realistically, it was based off this. This says, this guy is the only Cameroonian fighter in UFC history. The UFC posted that in 2023. But Dana White's acting like, oh, we don't erase history. We don't do things like that. Tito Ortiz tried to help out, but it kind of just went bad. Oops, let me see if you guys can see this. He says, Francis Ngannou, congrats on the fight and standing your ground for the future of all MMA fighters. I tried, and they tried to erase me from the UFC history books. I hope they do the same to you. He means well, but I think he meant to say, I hope they don't do that to you. But I don't know. It's Tito at the end of the day. So, like I was saying earlier, Francis Ngannou is not going to be the only one. If you ever speak against the UFC, Dana White will make sure that he tries to erase you from the UFC, right? And then interesting part about this whole thing was he did get back to Kevin Iole, and Kevin Iole said here, I should also had it here for full context that Dana said that he already called Stylebender to apologize. So let me go to it. There was an update with this. 1 second. I think I've seen it here. All right. Dana White takes full responsibility for Francis Ngannou being scrubbed from the UFC 305 promo video. Somebody was editing that and made the conscious decision thinking that was the right thing to do. I don't know about it, and it was nothing that ever came across my desk. I'm in charge of everything production related, so at the end of the day, the fact that it happened falls on me 100%. It's my responsibility, and I accept it. Blame me for that. I put them in such a tough spot sometimes, saying all the crazy shit is hard for them. So basically, he's saying that an editor thought that Dana White wanted him to do this, so that's why he did it. I don't believe it, because from past history, you're known for doing this. You're known for erasing people's history from the UFC just because they disagree with you. How come he never said anything about Francis Ngannou's son dying, right? He never made a post. He never said one thing about it, right? This is your former champion that's going through a tough time mentally, and you didn't even acknowledge that or make a public post like the UFC does when something happens to their fighters, right? That's why I don't believe anything Dana White says. But I want to know your thoughts. Do you guys believe that Dana White truly didn't know? Or did you think he did know and this is what he wanted and it just got exposed at a later time? If you are new, please go ahead and consider subscribing so I can get more videos out to you guys. Peace.